Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Now We Know podcast, where we dive into the minds and learn from visionary changemakers. Today, we're super excited to introduce Arya Diwase, a true changemaker in social entrepreneurship. From her roots at NYU and her transformative experiences at Duke Fuqua, Arya has redefined education with ventures like Application Ally and BuildUp Internships. Arya is a driving force behind a more equitable, future-ready education system. And let's dive in and learn how she's turning her, vision and her ideas into action. Arya, thanks so much for being here. And if you could start off and just, tell us about yourself, that would be awesome.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you, Naveen, Patrick, Karthikeyan, for having me. Super honored to be here. Yeah, I think a little bit about me. I grew up in India. I studied in India till grade 12. I then ended up going to NYU for my undergraduate degree, where I pursued journalism and environmental studies. I did a lot of mock trials. So I was also very involved in sort of the legal societies, law. And honestly, I think for me, my educational journey has just been one of the most important and defining experiences of my life, because I'm not someone that knew what I wanted to do before going into my undergraduate degree. And so I really explored a lot, really tried to follow my passions. And, through it, I made applications to public policy school, journalism school, law school, worked at, nonprofits, launched my own nonprofit, Jazz Hands, worked at a law firm, and really then realized that my passion was truly within social entrepreneurship, a combination of course, social impact, but also business, because it let me use a lot of the skills that I had learned over the years. So I ended up doing a double master's at Duke University, a master's in public policy, as well as my MBA. I've been working on my companies during and after the program. And I think my work within the education space, both through Application Ally and BuildUp Internships, is really about helping students find what they're passionate about and supporting students that might want non-conventional educational journeys as well. So you can see how a lot of it has been inspired by my own journey, which was pretty non-traditional, and it was a lot of exploration and figuring out what you're passionate about, and that didn't happen overnight. It took, 14 plus years for me to figure out that this is where I wanted to be. And still every single day, I'm like, maybe I could have done law, or I could have done something else. And there's just so much to learn. But I think just the experiences that I've had at school, through internships, through fellowships, really just changed my career trajectory. And kind of those experiences have really informed the work that I do right now. So yeah, that's a little bit of background about me.
Yeah. Thanks so much for sharing, Arya. And again, definitely sounds like there's a lot we can talk about, and you've done a lot already. So yeah, I think that's huge.
Thank you.
Maybe if you could start off by just sharing why you're interested in all of this. Was there like a childhood experience, or just something that that happened to you, or I don't know, just something that inspired you? I don't know. Like, how did all of this get started?
Yeah, I think different reasons for different companies. For Application Ally, I think what inspired me was that I didn't have an external consultant for my own applications. And I had a very unique and different journey where I was applying to business school really early. I was one of the youngest people in my class. The average age is about 30. I was applying when I was 25, 26. And so my journey didn't involve the bigger consulting brands. It didn't involve like any of these major companies that a lot of my classmates had worked at, but it was rooted in social entrepreneurship, starting a nonprofit, and really needing an MBA for its core, which is learning to be a business leader for your own business, right? I didn't have a lot of consulting support because most consultants I went to said I didn't have the work experience to get into an MBA program. And so I had to do a lot of this research on my own, kind of like have a compelling narrative for myself, decide, what would work, what wouldn't, highlight my strengths. And it was a mammoth task. And, I ended up making some really competitive applications, both the public policy school as well as MBA school. I got into Harvard for policy, Columbia, Berkeley, Duke. Eventually ended up at Duke because they gave me great scholarship, but also I could pursue a dual degree. And it was the best decision I ever made because I absolutely loved it. But I think that entire process took about a year and a half of learning and unlearning and like having a non-traditional application. And so when I launched Application Ally, that was really the goal, which is like I have applied to law school and I got it. I applied to journalism school, I applied to policy school and business school. And so I kind of knew the application processes for all of these firsthand. And I know so many students in India that do so much more than I have done, have amazing profiles and can get really high scholarships to attend some amazing institutions in the United States or the UK for that matter, but just don't really know how to kind of package that or channel that or even know what's out there. And I started Application Ally during COVID, actually, to support those students. I didn't think it would blow up. It was something I just did from a one-on-one mentorship perspective. And my co-founder, Anushka, she actually didn't even have a bachelor's degree. So she was making like master's applications directly without a bachelor's because what she wanted to study was trauma therapy. And there was no degree in India for that. And so instead, she chose to work for 4 years at different organizations and directly make master's applications to the UK. Eventually ended up going to UCL, which is an incredible school. And so she also had a very non-traditional journey. And we were like, why don't we come together and support students that may not be cookie cutter applicants, in succeeding and really having those opportunities that they currently don't see for themselves. And so that was sort of what inspired us to start Application Ally. Since then, it's just grown. And every year we have incredible applicants come in. We've worked with more than 800 students on a one-on-one capacity. And we're in school partnerships with international schools in India. And now we recently had a partnership with the ENCO group of schools in Africa. And so we're really trying to expand our services abroad. But even beyond study abroad, I think for me personally, like the biggest challenge has been like, being able to say, hey, I know I want to do this. And this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. It took me a really long time to get there. It took me all of high school, undergrad, 3 years post undergrad to like get to that point. And so I think our latest sort of product under Application Ally, which is BuildUp Internships, it's for high school students to have that exposure early on to be able to make those decisions early on. So it kind of just is really inspired by my own journey and, my co-founder's own journey.
Wow, for sure.
Can you tell us why you chose to do journalism and environmental studies? Obviously, they're very two different fields of study. So how did you make that decision, and what did you learn from it the most?
Yeah, great question. I think I chose to do environmental studies. That is what I actually applied for post my high school because I did it in high school in Kodaikanal. I absolutely loved it because at that point it was really kind of the setting I was in. I was surrounded by the Palni Hills. We were studying things like mercury poisoning of the local community, the impact it had on the communities around. So for me, the environmental perspective was a lot more about societies and communities and how the impacts of it are going to stay with us forever. And that's the reason I wanted to do environmental studies. It wasn't pure science. It was more so the social impacts of pollution or social impacts of any environmental decision that we make. But I was also doing IB film and I was very interested in storytelling, also again from a lens of social justice. So I think NYU was so perfect for me because when I applied, I actually only applied for environmental studies and they got back to me and said, we actually think you should do the liberal arts program or the liberal studies program because we see that you're interested in multiple things. And why don't you explore it before you make a decision? And so that's exactly what I did. I really studied both. And very often there were like technical things within both that are so different from each other. But the way the program is structured at NYU is incredible because if you're a journalism major at NYU, you have to be a double major. They make you take one class with journalism because they consider journalism as a mode of communication, not in and of itself just, a subject interest. So they say that you can be a journalist and you should be a subject knowledge specialist in any other major to be able to kind of dive deeper. And so that worked out really, really well. Within journalism, I focused predominantly on documentary making because, again, I didn't want to tell fictional stories. I really wanted to focus on stories of public importance, social justice, social good. My final year thesis documentary revolved around policy issue of sort of stray animals in the country and kind of like policy implications for the government, for the local community, all of that. My peers, documentaries focused on, trans people in America, trans rights, focused on kind of Chinese New Year celebration and being a part of a minority community within a certain country. So I really think it's such a powerful tool to tell stories of real people and real issues. And I still use those skills even today for my business in terms of understanding different perspectives, in terms of researching issues in depth, in terms of like telling a compelling story, whether that's about our business, about our customer, about anyone. I think it was super helpful. And the last thing I'll say about it was really, really helpful for the job I had immediately after, which was within law. I was actually working with victims of domestic and sexual abuse when I was at a law firm in New York called Sanford Sharp, and I got to work on some really big cases. I got to work on the Dartmouth sexual assault case within the psychology department. It just helped me so much in being able to empathize with the people I was speaking with, conduct victim interviews, conduct the legal research, all of that. I think my journalism degree was the most valuable for me. And that's why you see a lot of even lawyers do kind of journalism, political science at an undergraduate level. So that's kind of where it started. But honestly, I think that degree served me well for several years after.
I think that's really, really cool.
Thank
While
you.
we're on the topic of, you picking different, areas of study to focus on, we also want to talk about, why you picked Duke School of Business, which is, I don't want to say it wrong, but I think it's Fuqua. Is
Yeah.
it Fuqua?
Yes, you got it right. That's a hard one to say.
Yeah, it is. And I was just looking at, your profile in Application Alley, and you've been accepted by, Harvard University, UPenn, all of the big ones, Northwestern University and Columbia University. But can we hear a little about why you picked, what motivated you at least to pick Duke's Fuqua School of Business to pursue your MBA? And you tell us a little about the application process, because I think people would love to hear about it.
Yeah, so many reasons for my decision to pick Duke overall. So I think just for context, I had applied only to the public policy program across all of those admits that you see. So like those admits are from the public policy school, the Harvard Kennedy School, then UPenn's SP3 public policy, Berkeley, Columbia. And I didn't even know I wanted to do an MBA. Like I thought I only wanted to do public policy, right? And I didn't think I would also qualify for an MBA just because, I was going in really young, and you do need approximately 4 years of experience. So anyone who's listening, like if you're, applying, that's traditionally the average years of work ex. And it makes a lot of sense because when you're in an MBA classroom, so much of it relies on your prior experiential knowledge in actual jobs you've held. So much of it is applied, right? And so they want to maintain that. And so I didn't think I would qualify, but I launched Application Ally in COVID once I already had my admit. And I didn't realize how quickly it would take off. But by the time I had to make the decision of attending school, I realized that like this was something that was growing significantly. And I personally just didn't have any of the technical business skills to run it in a way that I think would be fair. We discussed it a little bit, Patrick, before, but I've always been so scared of numbers, which is another thing. I'm like, why was I so scared of numbers? But I just dropped any sort of like math courses or anything quantitative at an undergrad level, that I was just like, I can never run a business. I could never be a business owner. I could never grow this company. And once we started a company and it started growing, for me, it was like, okay, you know what? I can't just sit back and say I can never do this. Maybe I just need to equip myself with the skills to do it. And then I decided to make my business school application. So one of the first criteria for me was that I should be able to do it in conjunction. So a lot of people don't know, but you can actually do dual degrees, even at a master's level. It is 2 separate master's degrees, but instead of completing it in 4 years, you could complete it with 1 year less, within 3 years. And so for me, already the filtration system, not a lot of the programs that got into policy school had the dual option. So the first filtration criteria was that it had the dual option. And the second filtration criteria for me, even with policy schools, I was actually debating across Duke and like a lot of the others. And of course, you hear about Duke. You don't hear about it too much in India, to be honest, which is really sad because it's such an incredible school. But we only hear of, Harvard, Yale, Stanford, which is incredibly sad. But that's what I had heard of. And some of my family members were like, of course you have to go to Harvard. Why would you go to Duke? Like, of course you would. But the benefit of having done my undergrad in the US, I knew exactly what I was looking for in a grad school. For me, that was definitely going to be a very tight-knit community. And I firsthand had seen the impacts of having small class sizes, having like a department that invests in you, that has lesser students to invest in. And so the Duke Fuqua MBA program really stood out to me because they had just made such a pivot into entrepreneurship. And as an institution, they wanted to kind of put entrepreneurship as at the forefront of whatever they're doing over the next 10 years. And, I looked into the INE, which is their Innovation Entrepreneurship Center. I looked into kind of all the work that they do, even with undergrads. And I realized very quickly that this is a school that really wants to invest in their student entrepreneurs. It's not a traditional entrepreneurship school. So if you look at our business school, and if you compare it to, let's say, Stanford, if you compare it to Harvard, there's a lot more entrepreneurs coming out of Stanford and Harvard. Those are known as entrepreneurship programs. Duke is known as a consulting and marketing school, right? But for me, I knew that the department where Duke was trying to go, not where it was within the direction of entrepreneurship. And there was so much they were doing with their INE Center. They moved it under the business school. They have an amazing person leading it, Jamie. I'm sure, Naveen, you've met Jamie before. You've heard of Jamie. And so for me, I knew that like this would be a chance that they would take on me. But also like for me, I knew that the tension I would get as a first-time entrepreneur would be really different from some of these other schools. And every person I spoke to at Duke just went so out of their way to convince me of the school and just went so out of their way to make me feel welcome. They had someone come and pick me up when I reached out, and someone just from my class came and helped me move in. Like just these small things that make Duke so, so special. I don't think it's replicable in any other school. And immediately then I kind of knew that that's the direction I wanted to go in. And so I made my application accordingly. Luckily, somehow got in, and it's just been life-changing for me. I was actually on the Duke waitlist for the MBA program. I didn't even get in immediately. I obviously had my policy admits across the schools, but for the MBA, I was on the waitlist. My student council co-president, Stephen, and I, we always joke about this, but he was on the waitlist too. And we both were waitlisted candidates that got off and then ended up being elected student council presidents for a body of more than 900 students. And so it's like, it's really like once you're there, like it really doesn't matter where you started. It's about like what you make of it. And I think they just invest so much in you. I think Duke invested in me they gave me a stipend that matched a lot of the regular offers over summer to run my own business. They had pitch competitions on campus where I raised enough money to be able to like say, okay, I don't want to recruit consulting, or I don't want to recruit, marketing or whatever. And I just want to focus on my company. And at every moment, they like made it so that I didn't get sucked into that entire recruitment cycle, and I could stay true to what I wanted to do. And so, it's the best decision. Frankly, I think I wouldn't have that experience anywhere else. And so it was a calculated choice that just comes from the fact that I kind of knew what I wanted, and I picked a school that would give me that instead of just deciding based on like traditional paper brand value and things like that.
No, yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's crazy to hear from you, because you got into all the top schools.
Thank you.
I think I remember asking Naveen why he joined Duke once, and I'm not sure if I remember right, but he said they have a lot of parties. So we should ask Naveen now why he chose Duke.
I was telling these guys that the undergrad experience is so different from the graduate experience, but lots of parties in the MBA as well. To be very frank, you do get tired of it after a point, but I'm sure Naveen's experience is a lot more fun than mine.
Okay, that was 2 years ago. I'm a senior now. I've changed. I'm a changed person. Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. No, I think that's awesome, Arya. Again,
Yeah.
I think everyone definitely knows about the team Fuqua culture. The culture at Fuqua is very different from most universities. If you want to quickly talk about that, I think that would be awesome.
Yeah, I think it's like transformed my perspective on business leadership completely. I think when you're recruiting, or like not recruiting, but like when you're in your application cycle for Fuqua, you hear it all the time. You see it on their website, like Team Fuqua, Team Fuqua, Team Fuqua. But for a lot of these schools, it's just buzzwords, right? Like, not shit on like any university, but like when I went to NYU, I think it's like the phrase you hear is the world's your oyster, and like the city is your campus, right? And you don't really think about what that means till you're there. And like as an undergraduate, I think that's an awesome thing to have as a graduate student, but as an undergraduate, city being your campus is a bit daunting, right? Where it's like, okay, I don't see my friends outside of class because we live all over the city. It's quite an individualized sort of system where it's like you're really pushed into being an adult so soon. And I think with Fuqua, it's like they kept saying Team Fuqua, Team Fuqua, Team Fuqua. And I was like, yeah, like this is just like a buzzword, like they're saying it, but everyone's, all out for themselves when you're there, because that's traditionally how MBA programs are. It's so competitive. You're competing with your best friends for limited job offers across so many companies. But the way Fuqua is structured and the way the program is structured is so team oriented. As soon as you go in, you're divided into sections. Every section you're divided into something called C-Lead, which are like groups of 6 people that you work with for the rest of your time in Fuqua on all of your assignments. These C-Leads are so thoughtfully put together that you have people from all over the world in your C-Lead. So my C-Lead had 2 Americans, an American Indian student, a Chilean student. Like really the diversity was incredible. They had all come from different areas. And when we first got together, it's like, I don't know how this is going to work with this team for a whole year and a half. That's a lot, right? Especially like when you come from a culture where it's like, okay, like your grades are yours and like your assignments are your responsibility. You're really like within that individual success mindset, but you need to switch to like a team success mindset. And so initially I was like, okay, they put us in this team, but like, are we really even going to work as a team? The amount that they invest in making sure that you build that team spirit early on is actually insane. We went for this offsite, which was they took the entire class, 400 plus students offsite, and we did like these crazy team activities, like physical team activities, like rock climbing and like trust falls, all of that stuff for a day. And like you really got to know your team. And then beyond that, every team was assigned a mentor who would act as a mediator within that team. That came from second year students. So it was just so much thoughtful investment in that experience that you really grow to like love your team. Every class is designed in a way to kind of drive that point home. So one of the main things we learn is the smartest individual of your team will still perform poorly as compared to the team collectively. And we would do every assignment and we literally saw actual data points where that is true, where it's like you have a team of 6 and you have an individual that's smarter than everyone else in that team. But when given the same challenge that a team solves versus the individual solves, the team always succeeded. And so it was just small things like that that reinforced to me that the way they're trying to like teach and the philosophy is extremely team oriented. And it's so important because for business leaders or even in startups, right, when you're putting together teams, a lot of the time, like especially in India, like you're so scrappy, especially if you don't have outside investment. Like we don't have outside investment, but now we have a team of 12 that's awesome, like super dedicated. And I think it's so important to be able to motivate that team and work together with that team when you don't have those incentives of money holding someone around, right? You can sometimes, retain the best talent just because your views on leadership and your views on teamwork. So I think that was a big one for me. And then I would say the second thing was they really live it. Like, for example, I got to serve on the dean's committee to pick the new dean of Fuqua, which was an immense honor. And on that committee were literally all our top professors across all departments, the dean of the law school. They were just such incredible people that I was like, wow, I'm really out of place here, because what could I possibly add in terms of, opinions for this new team that we're going to pick. Really the student experience was valued. They asked me so many questions. I was representing so many students. They took that into consideration. They had such a good holistic process of picking our next leader. And you could tell that the team picked the leader. So I just think no one does it like Fuqua does it. And for me, it was very transformative because that's not how I used to lead. And so the switch in my mindset has really helped my career to kind of lead with a team mentality before that individual mentality.
No, yeah, for sure. I think that's awesome. And I think that's such a valuable lesson. Yeah, I'm definitely sure, you're applying it, and build internships in your company and stuff. So I think just transitioning to I think a little bit of application advice to the audience. And, we understand what it is. So just curious, what the application ally does, and maybe I know it's really impressive because the team was able to secure over 120 crores in scholarships with 100% acceptance rate into private universities, which I think is really cool. So maybe tell us what makes it so successful and just a little bit of that experience.
Yeah. So just to break up, so we actually work with students applying for graduate programs. We also work with students applying for undergraduate programs. What's different is that our focus is on boutique consulting. So we don't do mass consulting, which means that we always work with a limited cohort of students every year. And the consulting process is a 36-step process that we've developed based on my co-founder and my own experiences. And so it's extremely handheld. It's a 36-step process. And we don't limit consultations. So we don't have a fixed number of times you can speak with us or chat with us. It is unlimited consultation for the year-long engagement that you have with us. And so I think it's really, as the name says, it's not like we're consultants. We're really your allies. We're like your friends in your process. And we're kind of there for all aspects of it, right? Everything from deciding whether you want to apply to grad school to like what that application looks like, the application itself, making decisions, the mental health element of it, all of it. It's just that our consulting approach is extremely collaborative and different in the sense that like you also have to put in 100%, just as we do, right? So that's sort of the overall philosophy. We help with undergraduate applications to universities all over the world and then graduate school applications to universities all over the world. Why we've been so successful with scholarships, I would say, is because we don't have college tie-ups in the sense that we are not invested in sending you to a specific college. What we care about is that the college is a fit for you, you're a fit for the college, and your own authentic journey is going to get you there. And so a lot of our focus is really on helping you kind of figure out what that narrative is for yourself and what that authentic journey is, and just have a very compelling application that, that paints a very clear picture of that. So we have a lot of non-traditional applicants that work with us. We had, a 45-year-old mom that decided really late she wanted to make a career switch and go for a different degree. We had someone who had a really bad history of epilepsy and sort of, was wanting to go into a degree that would be really demanding and kind of had a lot of gaps in her profile. We had someone that wanted a very unique degree like dance movement therapy. And I think because we have such a specialized focus and because we have such a personalized approach, we're able to get a lot out of applicants versus kind of more streamlined cookie cutter approach. So when we think about our clients, we also say that, yes, you should be a fit for us, but we also should be a fit for you. Because really, you're going to spend so much time with us in this process that is something you should enjoy. And so I think that's really been Application Ally's success story. Where we've tried to do things differently is we want to make consulting more affordable for individuals. And, right now, of course, it is expensive. I won't say our consulting rates are cheap. They are cheaper as compared to the competitors, but they're still expensive. And it's unfair that only people that can afford it at that price point are able to kind of get that advice. And so we've always tried to figure out ways in which we can be more accessible. We can have our programs reach more people. And so one of the ways is a partnership that we have with a school, international school. We actually did a B2B model with them to be able to kind of apply our consulting philosophy and develop a customized program for all their students. And, that's the same sort of model we're following with BuildUp, because the reason we started BuildUp was because we had so much interest from individuals not just applying abroad, like CBSE students, ICSE students who want to stay in India, but just want to figure out what they want to do in life, right? Because in India, we have to, I'm sure you guys know, we have to decide arts, commerce, science, what field do we want to be in?
Yeah.
And that's a lot of pressure. Grade 10, that's a lot of pressure. We've not even been exposed to some subjects to make that decision. When I was in grade 10, I didn't even have economics. So how could I have ever decided to study business or anything, right?
Yeah.
And so I think we started BuildUp Internships because we got so many inquiries from parents that are when we don't want to go abroad, but we want help figuring out, what student inclinations are that are beyond standardized testing. And so with BuildUp Internships, it's a very affordable product. And the goal is that we can partner and work with students and college counselors and school counselors and really offer it to anyone and everyone that needs it. We've even kind of just briefly mentioned, but we just signed a partnership with NCO schools. They're the largest network of affordable IB schools in Africa. And, our product is something that even they
Congratulations,
can
Arya.
access.
That's huge. Yeah.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And so, it's like we see a lot of potential value in it beyond building up your profile for college. And kind of that's the vein we want to keep like going in. And like that's the direction we want to keep going in.
Sounds amazing, Arya. I know you already touched upon BuildUp a little bit, but obviously Naveen and I have read a lot on BuildUp, and I really like how it's such a unique solution to internships. And for the sake of the audience, could you just tell us what BuildUp is and how it's unique in finding internships for students?
So BuildUp started with the issue of the fact that no one wants to hire high schoolers, right? Like no one wants to even hire undergraduates right now because they're tough. They're really tough to manage, to be very frank. And I think it's not that companies don't value new opinions, new perspectives. Companies have limited time and founders have limited time to be able to also manage a group of interns, right? So it was inspired by a program that we had at Fuqua, actually. It's called the Mentored Study. And a mentored study is essentially, instead of a class, you identify a company or a startup that you want to work with. You devise an entire project that you're going to work on for that company or startup. You get approval from a professor who acts as your academic mentor to make sure that the project that you're doing actually has learning outcomes. But it's a great way to expose you to like an industry that you want to recruit for. So a lot of people that want to get into competitive industries like venture capital do it, right? Because VC is really hard to break into. But if you worked at a VC, if you've done a project for a VC, it makes it that much easier. And so I think that really inspired me because I was like, why don't we have something like this in high school? Because parents in India are anyway paying certain amounts of money for courses, like Coursera courses. They pay for like upskilling, communication courses, leadership courses, but no one's really paying to like apply those skills in real world context, right? And so what we devised was, let's take that model of mentorship. The differentiation is that we're not just an internship platform, we're a mentored internship platform. It's almost like a fellowship and an internship combined, right? And why that fellowship and mentorship piece is so important is because it allows us to get companies on board. Companies are that much more on board because they're like, you're going to manage the interns, you're going to structure the project, you're going to have like very specific outcomes that we're working towards, and we will come in at strategic touch points, right? So we work with companies that are so open to giving that experience to kids, but more than anything, they love the structured element of it. And so what we do for students is we offer internships across more than 22 different industries, everything from AI to finance to music to, production, really like anything and everything. And the students work in teams. So they work in teams of 4 to 5 on a very structured project within that company. The job of structuring that project is our job. The job of getting that company is our job. The job of ensuring that the student work quality is high is our job. And how do we do that? We actually run sessions over the weekend for the students for any skills that they might need for the project. We have one-on-one check-ins with the students that the mentors that are assigned to their group do. And so it's really for students a really great learning opportunity. But the best part is it's with a real company. And you're not like working on these made-up challenges and simulated challenges, which have their value. But it's a different thing to say that at the age of 13, I actually interned with the Jaws. Or, I worked with GoPro. Like, it's a very different thing. The challenge is also finding the right company. Not every company wants to invest in students, or like not every company wants to give that time. And so for us, it's always a supply side challenge, which for so many students interested. But we also need to find the right fit with companies that want to make it a worthwhile experience for the students.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's really interesting. And I think I definitely agree with you, Ari, that it's much needed. Because just looking at my peers here in the US, like they've already done so many internships in high school and lots of projects, and that definitely sets them up for success when they're looking for full-time jobs because they have experiences. I think it's definitely very much needed, and I'm sure the kids can learn a lot by just doing it. Yeah,
for sure.
Yes,
I think there's also a benefit in. Nowadays I feel like college kids struggle to know what they really want. And so these internships will like really give them a hands-on experience on trying different things, whether they like it, whether they don't.
And you can hate it, right? And it's fine if you hate it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
It's a learning.
for sure. Yeah, I think I saw a post that I think it was funny, Arya. I think someone
Yeah.
from someone who's like, yeah, I absolutely did not like this or something. But
Yeah.
even then, it's
Yeah.
still like a great outcome because you're able to, help
Yeah.
this person find what they actually love or what they don't like.
100%. I love how they phrased it too. They're like, yeah, like I thought I would be good at this and I realized it's not my cup of tea and I didn't enjoy it. I was like, you know what? That's great. Like, because if we just did the first thing we loved, the first thing we were exposed to and we're like, great, like that's really rare, right? Like there's a lot of trial and error before you really figure out what you want to do. And so I was like, kudos to you, man. Like, yeah, be honest.
Or just curious about your view on, India's EdTech and the experiential
Yeah.
learning market.
Yeah. 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 I think obviously I'll speak more so to like our industry, which is the consulting industry. And kind of now that a lot of consultants are moving into like internships, I think it's very interesting, but a lot of people are moving into tech, right? Like tech, everything is tech, everything is AI. But what I am seeing is parents and students want to pay for non-tech because with education and with really like career guidance, I don't think India is yet at a position to completely trust AI given advice or AI facilitated projects completely. And so it's scary sometimes as a company. We're always like, should we have a tech product? Should we have a tech product? Like, is that how we need to scale? And you can very easily fall into the trap of that right now, given that everyone around you is doing that. But where we've seen the real value in our work is when we can put a face to the advice that we give, or we can actually have like what parents love about the program is the actual mentors that the kids have. They don't love the fact that it's virtual. Like that's something that initially we were like, everyone's going to love the fact that it's virtual. They can do it from anywhere. Like, of course, some people like from the smaller cities like Coimbatore, it's a bigger city, but there's limited industries there. They like it because they are like, now I can access an internship in Delhi or I can access an internship in Bangalore. For them, it's really great. But the first question a lot of parents ask is like, okay, if it's virtual, are they just going to be watching sessions on? Because I think the more tech-driven we've become, I think parents and also students have started yearning a bit more for experiences that are non-technical or just human interaction, right? And I say that all the time, it's like some people come to us and say, oh, like, is this internship going to be like learning how to code? And I'm like, yeah, it is, but we're not going to teach you how to code because there's 100 other products and, courses out there that will teach you to do that better than we will. What we will do is we will connect you to a real company, a real person, a human being, and a mentor that you can apply your code towards, or you can apply your code towards the challenge. And so I think just from my perspective, there's so much competition in this space. I think there's like two kinds of companies that are emerging. One that's like doing this super hyper manual, hyper people oriented processes, but charging like more than $2,000 for it. And then there's people that are like coming in and saying, oh, hey, like watch this series of 7 videos and do this one project that align with these 7 videos. And that's an internship. And then coming in at a price point of maybe like, $60. And I think it's really about like what market you're targeting. But for us, we want to be somewhere in the middle. Like we want to be able to drive that price down while still having enough like human-centered engagement and like human intervention to be able to make it high value for the students. So like that's the challenge. It's like there's so many companies out there and like on paper they sound similar and it's growing in India. It's like we have 5 or 6 competitors, like they're just popping up and it's growing so much that you're always stressed out that okay, like how are we differentiating? Right? Is it tech? Like do we now need to get into AI? Like let's have a platform and let's connect. And it's like we have to really push ourselves to stick to what we do well, which is act as allies and mentors for our students. And how can we optimize the mentorship process is what I'm personally focused on.
No, yeah, I think that's very interesting, Arya. Yeah, it's a very interesting concept. It's almost like you're carving out a new market within India where people are realizing that it's important to do all of this.
Yeah. Yeah. And EdTech is booming. Otherwise, there's so many other, like, this is just like what we're in. But like, if you look at just EdTech generally, now there's, tech softwares for teachers to automate, streamline their processes, like grading softwares. There's so much. And that I think is really booming. Mainly because like, as a culture, we spend a lot on education. like the education industry in India is insane, right? Like we are fueling economies abroad because of the number of people we're sending abroad. So from a market perspective, like it's really large market. And so there's space for a lot of companies to come in, and EdTech is huge. I think like with AI, it's going to be even bigger. My question would be kind of like, do you have to be an AI to like make it big within tech? Or like, are we still an economy where it's like, our parents, they still sort of prefer real estate investments to the stock market. And I think that's kind of where it's going to come down to, and it's a gamble at the end of the day.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Just curious, Arya, like, how do you go about trying to connect with companies and trying to find internships with them? And also curious if Indian companies themselves are open to it, or do you think it's mostly international companies in India that are willing to do it?
Yeah, great question. I think it's a big challenge. I think we're not picky about the companies. So like we try and target startups, early stage startups, where the founders will really use the work of the students. Like I remember when we started, there were so many tasks that I just couldn't do because I didn't have the time and I was so stretched and I didn't have the budget and I didn't have the money, right? And so I would have loved to have a dedicated team working on something, but I wouldn't want to guide them. Like I would want to be a resource for them, but I would want someone to manage them. And so we target young founders like myself, like early stage startups. The second type of companies that we target are companies that are targeting Gen Zs in their products. So if you're a company that's a beverage company that's targeting a Gen Z audience, who better to give you insights on a Gen Z team? So we really target companies that, are building for the new generation. And then third, we do target big companies that want young people to be aware of their products and aware of what they do and aware of certain industries. So, for example, we worked with Winshaws, like Amul. It's one of the biggest dairy producers in India. And that whole thing was like, now that AI is coming in and like there's so many, like everyone finds tech and AI sexy, and like people forget that it's the boring businesses, or it's really the businesses that you don't even hear about that are also actually really profitable. And there is a career to make in them. And, like some of these companies are like, people should know that this is an industry that's, booming. Textile industry, milk production industry. There's so much that like now people are just forgetting and not even getting into. So I think they care a little bit more about it from that angle. And the perspective of like other Indian companies, most of our companies actually in the arena are Indian. And so that's, just a matter of pride for us. We're really targeting Indian startups to be a part of it. We love having foreign companies as well. And like, we're targeting startups in the US and the UK. But my team is predominantly pursuing companies in India as a part of the portfolio. And yeah, we have a really good team. So, they do a lot of back end work in identifying what companies would be a good fit for us. Because like I mentioned, we're not a matching company. We don't just match you with an internship. We really curate and understand the internship experience, and our priority is to optimize that experience. And so it's really it's hard to find the right companies, but it's really important. And so our team has been doing actually a good job at it, because this year we've also signed a partnership with an ICSE school in Pune, and that principal has made it mandatory for their entire 8th grade to do internships with us. And so we're really looking to source internships for 140 students. So, we're in the thick of it right now, like trying to get those projects in but I think it's exciting because if we're able to crack that and we're able to do that, we really have a model of something that's scalable and that can work.
Yeah. It sounds like a good problem to have.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so nice to hear that you're getting so many opportunities. It shows that there's a need for it. And what I'm really curious about is, so you've built Application Ally, BuildUp, and I know early on you also helped build Himayat. So could you tell us about your process of going from idea to implementation, like from 0 to 1? What did that process look like for you?
Yeah. It's really hard, I think. For me, it was really great with that. Because we had a class that made you think through how to go from 0 to 1, right? It made you think through. Sorry. So we had a class at Duke, and that really helped you think through going from 0 to 1 by testing assumptions with very less money or no money. So to give you an example, we were trying to diversify application. I were like, why don't we create a tool to help students recruit, right? Like a grown-up version of BuildUp, I guess, for college students. And they were like, okay, how are you going to test this? And I was like, okay, we're going to invest in making this amazing website and we're going to hire salespeople and then we're going to like sell it and then we're going to see how many people buy it. And they're like, okay, like how much money are you going to need for this? And it was a lot. And they're like, you don't have this money. You're a student. So if I had to give you a week to test this, how would you do it? And they really taught us how to devise these extremely low cost assumption tests that determine whether there is a demand for your product, right? One, of course, you need to spend time with your customers. So like, if you don't know your customer really well, you can't design any product for them. You should never have an idea and then design the product. So even with BuildUp, like we never thought of BuildUp. It's not an idea we had. Our customers came to us and said that, okay, but like, yes, you do study abroad, but I'm interested in this. I'm interested in this. I'm interested in this. And you hear it enough to be like, okay, let's build for this, right? So with this class, we wanted to test this product and I was like, okay, well, we're going to need a website. We're going to need to do this. We're going to need to build the tech for this. And my professor was like, okay, but why don't you just build the website, say you have the tech for it, assign a price value to it and put it out there and see if anyone buys it and refund them once they do. And I was like, oh, you know what? That's actually crazy. And then first I was like, maybe we should just ask them whether they'd be willing to pay $7 or $20. And he was like, no, charge them. Like, see if they actually go and pay it, right? And so we ran this test where the only thing we really needed to do was create a website on Wix for free. And the second thing we needed to do was run $10 worth of ads. And we had like 7 people that bought a product that didn't exist. You know, and we tested that there's a demand. Like for us, we proved that there's demand. And, you know, and then you can be like, okay, like how do I now take this ahead? Now it's like, let's build it, right? So really low cost assumption testing is a great way to think through whether that's something worth building. The second thing is for me, that's something that's really helped is like not taking on investments. Even so far right now, we haven't. Maybe at some point we will, but right now it's like, it's what we're putting into the company and the revenue the company is generating that's just fueling operations for the past 4 years, right? So we're completely bootstrapped, but it gives us a lot of freedom to take a lot of risks and to like ideate new products and kill new products and not worry about it because you're not like on borrowed money or time. It's really yours, you know, and like just having a slow pace of growth is completely fine. Like we're not claiming to go from 0 to like 40,000 students in a year. Like my goal would be that we go from 0 to like do 500 students this year really well. And if once we have something once that we're really proud of, we then think about scaling. Like feeling that pressure to scale constantly when you don't have the product market fit is something that's really, you know, like founders often just fall into that pattern and you don't need to do that. And finally, just a team. I think having a really good co-founder, having a solid team that's going to like just be there through it with you is really important for 0 to 1 because in that journey of 0 to 1, you have a lot of losses and like dealing with it as a solo founder is very difficult. So, you know, just kind of having a support team that also is feeling that like, you know, sharing kind of those losses, but also sharing the victories to drive you. I think that's something that, yeah, is really important. Also, last thing I'll say, because you did mention Himayat, right? So Himayat is something I'm still working on. It's just a product we've had to change so many times because we don't feel like we have the customer market, you know, we don't have the product market fit for it. And we've changed it 100 times and we go back into customer discovery and back into customer discovery. And now we're finally at the point where we're like, okay, like great, let's get the MVP out. But that took 3 years, you know, and that's completely fine because if we built for the wrong product, if we built it too early, 100% this would be like a 1-year thing or a 2-year thing. And then you'd have to drop it because you've just built for the wrong audience. You don't know what you're doing. And so because it's such a different industry than what I'm currently used to, it's an issue I'm passionate about, but there are still so many gaps in it that I'm like, I don't know much about insurance. You know, I need to speak and learn from insurance experts. I need to speak to maids. I don't have the lived experience of a maid. I have the lived experience of a student. And so I can design a product for a student. But if I'm going to design a product for like domestic workers, like I should have that, like I should know enough to do it. And that sometimes takes time. And so even with Himayat, like we are going to be launching our MVP in June, but like it's been a while. It's been 2.5 years for that, which, you know, at sometimes you're like, like excitement, you want to get it out fast, but it's also really important to get it out right.
Yeah. It's like taking your time to actually make sure it's a good product or a good idea. Yeah. I feel like the definition keeps changing as you learn more.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Just to be a little mindful of time, Arya, I think let's go to the fun rapid fire questions. I think this will be little more fun, hopefully, for you. Okay, all right. Here we go. What's one what's one unconventional habit that fuels your creativity?
I think for me, that's just like staying up really late. I think my best work, or I guess my best ideas come to me super late. In college, I did not sleep before 4 a.m. And, I think that's just like a bad habit because I didn't get enough sleep and I was cranky throughout the day. And like, that's not what you hear of some really successful founders. So I don't know if that's really going to impact me too much in the future. But as of now, I think that is a non-conventional and bad habit, but that does fuel my creativity.
That's funny.
The next question is, if you weren't doing what you're doing currently in the education space, what other passion would you be pursuing?
Law. I think I'd be an attorney. I would love to be a practicing civil attorney working. I'd love to be in court. I wouldn't want to be a corporate attorney, but I'd love to like represent victims. I'd love to represent, individuals that have gone through some difficult things. I enjoyed it a lot when I worked for a year at a law firm, and I also enjoyed mock trial because of the public speaking element a lot. So I think I would definitely be a lawyer.
What's your go-to mantra when facing tough decisions?
My go-to mantra while facing tough decisions is I don't go to too many people. I don't like having 700 people give me like contradicting advice. I really listen to my team that is in that situation with me, and we will talk through the pros and cons of any decision. And once we make that decision, we're at peace with that decision. I try not to have any regrets in terms of, okay, if we did this, if we did that, bad decision, all of that. I think it's like you need to know what you're getting in with the decision, but once you make it, that's it, right? Like we need to sort of stay by it. So I really rely heavily on my team, and my husband and my family also, of course, while making decisions. But I don't try to listen to too many people. I really don't care what other people are doing. So that served me well. I have blinders, and even if 700 people around me are doing something and I'm doing something else, I'm fine with that.
No, for sure. I think that's great advice, for sure.
Could you tell us one resource that any aspiring social entrepreneur could read, something that you used to guide you through your journey as a social entrepreneur?
Yeah. I think something we learned at Fuqua was sort of like building your board of advisors that have nothing to do with your startup, right? Like, what's your personal like advice sounding board that you can go to? And like, it's like identifying those 3 or 4 mentors that have been there. Maybe it's a professional mentor, a personal person that like you turn to for advice, like 2 other people, maybe in your industry and outside your industry, that you just build over like 3 or 4 years where you're like, this is my personal advisory board. Like you have your company advisory board, this is your personal advisory board. I think that for me has been super helpful because I have 3 or 4 people that I really turn to when it comes to decision making or when it comes to like just advice about like work and entrepreneurship. An actual resource, I don't know if it's a resource, but like resource, like every resource at Duke, but not everyone has access to those. But I would say a skill that I think not a lot of people have, but you should, is like people always talk about like writing. Writing is a really important skill. I think is very, very useful. And people talk about like knowing GPT or people talk about coding. I think a skill that like every founder should have is Adobe Premiere Pro, which is like video editing and scripting, because I think in the beginning, to convey the value of your product, to be able to interview people, to be able to like put together a compelling vision, a website, even like those creative hard skills are just as important. Like knowing how to use Canva. You don't have to invest in a designer for at least a year. From when you start, like when application I started, we literally had the website up and running in a day. You have so many tools now just because I knew Wix. We made so many videos for our social media. We made so many creatives using Canva. Like we didn't need a marketing person for 2 years of this company. So, now we're like, oh, everything is marketing, struggling to like find a marketing person, paying for ads, all of it. But just to get started at 0 to 1, if you have those skills, is much easier. I think that's where founders get stuck. The first thing that the most anxiety founders have around is like building a website and like, finding marketing creatives and paying a marketing intern. And I'm like, that should be the least of the challenges here. So that's something that was really helpful for me.
Yeah, no internship for those kids in marketing. Okay, cool.
So with that. Ooh. My favorite quote is by this social entrepreneur, rather just a social activist in India, and I think it was like, don't look at the big picture because it can paralyze you. The only thing that matters is the next picture, which I think is so contradictory to what everyone says, which is like, look at the big picture, look at the big picture, look at the big picture. But it's so hard to do that, one, when you're an entrepreneur, and two, when you're like um a, a social entrepreneur, because sometimes the big picture is so big and so scary that like it prevents you from taking the immediate next step for what you need to do. And like, especially for people within the development space and the social entrepreneurship space, some of the issues you deal with are so heavy. Like, you have entrepreneurs dealing with issues around female domestic abuse, right? The big picture, the stats around it are so crippling, and so like the issues are so heavy that you just feel like, I shouldn't even take that first step to maybe solve 0.0001% of it. And so like this person was like, when we asked her a question during one of our so like this fellowship that I did, and she was like, they were like, oh, like, how do you like, plan for the big picture, and how do you plan? And she's like, I literally do not. Like, I plan for next steps, and it has really served me well in life, because even just from my personal life, my personal standpoint, my partner and I, we've been in a long distance for like 8 years, and like we work, like my work is across so many countries, and like we have to be away from each other so much, and it's like, it can be so paralyzing when you think about like next 5 years, next 3 years, next 4 years. I wouldn't even do half the things I do. So I'd really just like to think about what's my short-term goal. And like, I'd really like to focus on short-term goals, and I like to focus on immediate goals. Sometimes they're weekly, sometimes they're daily, but that's something that like has kept me in good stead, or like something that I've tried to live by.
Sure, no, I think that's amazing advice. Yeah, it's definitely something that no one hears often. So I really hope the audience definitely, applies this on a day-to-day basis. Okay, cool.
Awesome.
I think those are mostly your questions, Arya. And again, yeah, thanks so much for taking the time to talk to us. And it was really inspiring
Thank
just
you for
listening to
having
all these
me.
stories. For sure, yeah.
Thank you
And
so
then
much for having
good
me.
luck with everything.
Awesome.